News Now is brought to you by the Bank of Guam, the People's Bank, Docomo Pacific, island-wide, worldwide, the choice is clear. And Micronesia Renewable Energy. Go solar for zero money down. From the Pacific News Center in Hagåtña, Guam, here's Clint Rogel and Janella Carrera. Betsy Brown, Roselle Romanos, PNC Sports with Blake Watson, and weather with Rebecca Kim. With your news now.
Hafide and good evening. You're watching PNC's News Now. I'm Clint Rogel.
And I'm Janella Carrera. Thanks for tuning in. Your top story tonight, closing arguments were heard in the baby murder trial of John Castro this afternoon. Here's what prosecutors and defense attorneys had to say. More than a week, jurors sat through testimony after testimony describing the events that led up to the death of 23-month-old Alzano Latino. And now they're that much closer to deciding if John Castro is the person who punched Alzano in the stomach so hard it killed her. Prosecutor Matthew Heibel began by painting Castro as the strict disciplinarian.
He's the type of guy that makes a 1-year-old kneel on rice. Now, he said it's Susanna told him to do it, but he admitted that he did it. That he did these things like make her kneel on rice and make her stand in a corner for hours, make her bite her hands with his mouth. Remember, Dr. Lassett's a baby. You don't have the injuries that they have on accident.
Suspicious injuries, one that killed her that only cropped up the week that Castro babysat Alzano alone, says Heibel.
The week he takes care of her, the first day she comes up with a bruise, and on the third day she comes up with a ruptured small intestine.
Heibel also reminds the jury about Castro's demeanor on the witness stand. He called Castro a practiced liar, pointing out that, as Castro himself admitted, Susanna wasn't his real girlfriend, but a mistress. Heibel says Castro's testimony suggesting Susanna is responsible is only a last-ditch effort. Heibel says there's no outside evidence to support Castro's claims that he noticed injuries on Alzano.
Is there any credence that he even saw these, that they even existed, that Susanna was somehow the one who killed her own daughter?
Now came the defense team. Attorney Suresh Sampath focused on a timeline that he says proves only Susanna could have caused the death blow. Sampath argued that the medical examiner testified that the injury was inflicted between 4 to 24 hours before Alzano died, and that she wouldn't have been able to eat or sleep through the injury. Sampath points out that this eliminates a significant portion of that timeline because Alzano ate lunch and dinner the day before and even slept the night before.
He wouldn't expect to find the child sleeping. The child couldn't have slept through that kind of an injury. And it was undisputed that when Suzanne Latino came home from work at 4 a.m. on January 11th, 2014, guess what? Alzano Latino was asleep. The point of this is to indicate that the injury which produced Alzano Latino's death happened between 4 a.m. on January 11th, 2014 and 7:30 a.m. on January 11th, 2014. What that means is Suzanne Latino was home at the time that the death-producing blow was inflicted. She was home.
The jury will go into deliberations once jury instructions are completed.
Meanwhile, closing arguments were also heard in the Dededo gang rape case that took place last year. The case now goes to the jury, and they will decide the fate of one of the suspects. Help Me Roby. PNC's Roselle Romanes has more in this report.
Closing arguments wrap up in the Dededo gang rape case, where 20-year-old Help Me Roby is accused of raping 2 minors last year, December. Police say that the 2 girls, one girl age 15 and the other only 11 years at the time, were forced to drink vodka and then repeatedly raped and beaten in a jungle area outside the Santa Ana subdivision. In closing arguments today, the prosecution presented to the jury that Help Me Roby took what he wanted from 2 minors who were intoxicated, unconscious, and didn't know what was going on. Prosecutor Elizabeth Vaziliadis says based on testimony from witnesses in the trial, the 11-year-old girl that was raped was physically helpless, left in a ponding basin surrounded by trash, and suffered from intense injuries to her vagina. In the rape of the 15-year-old girl, Vasiliadis points out that she was also physically helpless and was found with lacerations on her back. Vasiliadis says from the 24 witnesses that were brought up in the trial, there were a number of eyewitnesses who testified that Helpme Roby put his penis inside both girls and that he confessed to a police officer that he did indeed have sex with both girls. On the other hand, defense attorney Terry Timblin fires back and says that the victim's testimony should be disregarded because all were drunk, it was dark in the jungle, and the first thing they repeatedly said was, "I don't remember." Timblin says both girls couldn't testify that they were penetrated at all. Timblin also says there is no evidence that proves there was any violence. He says the sex between Roby and the girls was consensual. Timblin makes one final point to the jury and says, "You are not condoning child abuse or criminal sexual conduct. Your job is to find out if all of this even happened at all." He adds that Roby may not deserve a merit badge, but it doesn't mean he's guilty of everything he's charged with. Roby faces charges of rape and other sex crimes. Roby is just one of the 5 suspects, but is the only one to go on trial. The others, Betwin Henry, Gibson Bilias, Hen Henry, and Uratok Henry, have all pleaded guilty. Rosal Romanes, PNC News.
And medical examiner Dr. Aurelio Espinola says the remains of a woman found in the Fatima area last week were likely moved there after she died. Espinola has not conducted an autopsy on the body, but he has been able to determine that the remains are from a woman who appears to have been young. He is waiting for Guam police to provide him with more information on possible missing persons before moving forward with an autopsy. The skeletal remains of the woman were found in the ponding basin off Fatima Road at about 5 p.m. last Monday. Another dead body was found last Friday morning above the Tengisan Cliff line. GPD spokesman Officer AJ Balahaja told PNC at the scene that it appeared the body was of a man between the ages of 20 and 30. He also said the man likely had passed away recently. Espinola did not conduct an autopsy on the man's body today, but told PNC that police asked him not to release the results. Balahaja would only say that the case is still classified as a death investigation.
On Friday, Guam Election Commission Vice Chairwoman Alice Tyron wrote a letter to Chairman Joe Mesa requesting that a special meeting be held and requesting a hand count audit of the election. Then on Saturday night, police were called to the GEC offices as Gutierrez Gumatauto supporters noticed what they thought to be lights coming from the GEC offices during a power outage.
On Saturday, I was tipped off from some concerned citizens that some lights were on at the Election Commission on the second floor of the GCIC building.
Gutierrez Gumatauto campaign manager Jeff Marchessault says this happened during a power outage that affected Agana and Agana Heights. GPD was called and they investigated, but they didn't have a key to the GEC offices, so they waited for GEC Executive Director Maria Pangilinan.
We inspected all the rooms, including the locked rooms, where the ballots are, the conference room, the vote, the whole office. It looked like everything was intact.
In fact, according to GPD PIO AJ Balahaja, the doors and surrounding areas did not appear tampered with, and it did not appear as if anyone had accessed the Election Commission offices at all. So no official complaint was taken.
We just think that it's worth questioning. It's worth bringing up to the attention of the Election Commission, because a day after our second complaint went to Election Commission Chairman Joe Mesa, this happens. This activity that is at least suspicious. If there are lights on inside the Election Commission during a power outage, it's certainly going to raise some eyebrows.
Pangilinan says the building has a generator so lights can remain on while the power is out.
SAT 10 scores for the island's public school students have remained below the national average for several years. But while results showed improvements in the 2012-2013 school year, the results of 2013-2014 show an overall decline. PNC's Betsy Brown reports.
At first glance, Guam SAT 10 results show nothing new. Students continue to fall behind the national average when tested for proficiency in math, reading, and language. But the 2013-2014 school year results also show a decline in proficiency from the previous year. And as students progress through the school system, the standards increase. Deputy Superintendent of Instruction Joe Sanchez says this results in more students performing at basic or below basic proficiency in the upper grade levels.
That happens earlier on, right, in the second grade, and every year more students drop off. Why? Because, like I said, although they're progressing, they're not progressing fast enough. And that especially becomes an issue in high schools when the tests become more specific to their content area.
These are the last SAT-10 results that we'll get from DOE, though, as the school district is now moving toward assessments that are more in line with the Common Core state standards.
And it actually gives us a benchmark. So right now the definition is proficient with SAT-10. On the ACT Aspire, it's determined, the terminology is ready. So the student is deemed to be college ready. That means they are on benchmark to being college and career ready at the end of their term with us.
Assessments will also be done throughout the school year from now on. Sanchez says this will allow intervention to begin early so that students can meet the benchmark later and hopefully progress to the next school year with the skills needed to succeed. Betsy Brown, PNC News.
And to see the SAT 10 results, read the State of the Public Education report available on our website at pacificnewscenter.com.
All right, now let's check in with Blake, who's got sports and weather.
Oh.
Hey, be sure to stick around, especially if you're the traveling kind, because today I'll take you all the way to Chinese Taipei City, that is, which is nice this time of year, although it seems like the forecast is calling for rain. Either way, you don't actually have to go. You just got to stick around for sports. We will go there, I promise. Full-on men's national team recap. Stick around.